Hey everybody, welcome to episode 32 of Power Bombshells. I am Sam, that is Mel. We are just two broads talking about the wrestling we watch. It seems like a lot of the wrestling we're getting to is just the same thing, but we promise we'll branch out more. There's just a lot of things going on in one particular company that we watch. I mean, there's other stuff going on in that other company that we actually were just talking about before we got on air.
We have there's a lot going on in wrestling, all right. An icon died this weekend.
Yeah, that's the biggest, more than anything that is happening.
I don't know, a legend, a god of wrestlingness.
Somebody made a really good point that he's like a lot. It gets thrown around like there will never be another, but Antonio Inoki is literally somebody who there will never be another. Like he is, and like of course, legend gets thrown around, icon gets thrown around. Those are like legit accolades, I guess, that you can apply to him, and there's so many more. Like those just barely scratch the surface of what this person has done for not just the wrestling business but the country of Japan, and just so many different aspects that he has done.
His life,
right?
I have a good friend who is an Inokiist. He's an Inoki file. He cannot learn enough about Antonio Inoki, and every time I get these little factoids about, I mean, this guy hit like biotech companies that he almost lost the company to, and bringing one that I love is that I just learned recently in my Inoki fact of recent was that when Antonio Inoki had his $50 bazillion Tokyo Dome versus Muhammad Ali fight.
Right.
So the Sheik was one of the people, or was the person who was tasked with teaching Muhammad Ali how to take bumps and how to pro wrestle.
How? Like that doesn't even seem like a real sentence. Like
I know.
It doesn't seem real. Like it's
because Sheik used to work for Inoki a lot. He worked all over, and I mean, he did a lot for Onita and FMW. Obviously, he was very much he's the reason we have the deathmatch wrestling that we see today.
Right.
But I mean, he used to love, but Sabu was New Japan. And that's, I mean, ultimately, what we see today, the New Japan we have today, the fact that New Japan exists today.
Right. Yeah.
Is because of Inoki.
That's just
it would have been lost. I'm reading 3 different books that I've started because Chris Charlton's books are awesome, but
I need to get those.
Lengthy.
He has a lot to cover.
But it's okay because I know that I'll finish them because they're history books and I get in the mood for the thing. And so I have Eggshells and I have Lion's Pride, and I'm more than halfway through Lion's Pride. But again, it's you have to start with Ricky Dozan has, Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta and Antonio Inoki, who was he was going by the Great Antonio or something because he really loved Western wrestling.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one thing that's really cool. On this network, we have a lot of people who will be able to pay a lot of really great tributes. I'm looking forward to seeing this stuff. I mean, I am Justin too. And Fumi they did a whole series. Yeah. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, please go get the go take a look at the
go back into the
write that down. That they did a whole series on Inoki.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll probably be reposting it or retweeting it so that you have links. So, but I mean, it's that alone is worth $5 a month because they give so much information, and that's actually something I need to check out myself. And then
Fumi is one of my most favorite people in the whole wide world to listen to talk. I mean, not only does he obviously know, and he knew Antonio Inoki personally, he was one of the people that has in recent months actually has gotten to talk to him or see him. I'm looking forward to when Jim Valley returns from his Disney vacation cruise there.
Right.
Because I really, 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 really hope you guys do an episode of Pacific Rim on Antonio Inoki, because I think that they could do real justice. But Holy crap, dude. I mean, I know that his health had been declining. As a friend put it to me recently, he had a public funeral for himself 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
That's what kind of crazy person this guy was.
Well, if anybody's going to do that, then I can't think of anybody besides Inoki that should do something like that. It just seems like, because he was just kind of, he was larger than life, and he like just encompassed living larger than life, and just
the more you learn about him, the more often you're like, that's
the more on brand
like
it is.
Something you're just like, okay, I believe that without any hesitation. You go from being that's not possible to being like,
well, it's
Inoki did it. Oh, okay. Well, of course
that tells me everything I need to know.
I I didn't get that slap. I didn't get that fighting spirit. But.
No. And yeah, that clip, I've seen that clip going around of when he's on the talk show, and the Spider-Man is coming down, and he just slaps the crap out of him. And and then of course there's the other clip of the just coming through and getting slapped with the fighting
the anniversary show from 2000, I think they said, where people lined up to have him smack him in the face so that they could be have his fighting spirit. And
and then and not even it's not even just obviously the wrestling world where he contributed so much, but to the political world. He did so much, and he followed in the footsteps of his father, and he did several stints in the House of Counselors, and I was reading, and maybe I knew this and just forgot, or Rafael Garcia from Daily DDT wrote this article about him yesterday. And one of the things that stood out was that in 1990, he traveled to Iraq and negotiated with Saddam Hussein for the release of Japanese hostages before the start of the Gulf War.
Is that amazing?
What?
Yeah.
That's such
Isn't that great?
Yeah. That's just... That's insane. Could you imagine somebody? I mean, I was trying to think of anybody in today's wrestling, not even just wrestling, that could do something like that. And I was like, I mean, I guess The Rock, but
maybe
that's just
I mean, I have my whole The Rock is going to be president theory.
I've heard
it's mostly a bold prediction, but I figure if I'm right, I'm right. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I've heard some people think that the TV show Young Rock is a way to gauge interest in him becoming president eventually, because it's telling
Cody
his
Rhodes
backstory.
Wants to go in after the whole thing.
He wants to go into
Jesse Ventura ran Minnesota for 8 years.
Exactly. So I mean, I was like, it could happen, but
but he didn't go to North Korea and negotiate the hostages.
No, he didn't.
I cannot see him doing so.
No, so I was just when I read that, I was like, that is the most insane thing. But then I guess on the other hand, we were just talking about, Inoki did that. Of course he did.
Of course he did.
It's just
of course he did.
That's the craziest thing. But so I'm sure that people are gonna have a lot. It's immeasurable what he did in his life. Is just that definitely he lived a one of a kind life too. Wow.
And I have a friend who's doing both days of Royal Quest in London, and he did let me know yesterday, since everybody had happened, and everybody basically, the whole crew, everybody, they're in London for Royal Quest 1 and 2 tonight, and for the weekend. So this happened weird time. Right. And what he actually said is that there was something of a mini funeral at the show, and he said it was really remarkable. It was something he was really not glad to be part of, but
sure, I know,
happy, proud responsible, honored to be part of, because it was something where these people are abroad, and some of them agreed with what Inoki did, and some people didn't, but they still always, someone like Tanahashi, where they had their beefs, and yet, regardless of that, he also respected the hell out of them. And
I was gonna say the respect.
So I can't wait to see some pictures, and I hope some people got some video.
Royal Quest is supposed to be on. It's going to be on World later, right? But is it as a paper?
So.
Is it as a paper? I saw something about it because somebody thought it was going to be on Fight, and then it wasn't. going to be. So I would assume that they would have that though, where people can watch it at some point. I mean, at least even the stuff they did for Inoki, I would think that they would put that somewhere where
I
fans
bet
could
you
see
it can't be on Fight directly because it probably interferes with something having to do with Sky or something like that. It's a
I
rights
feel like I
deal.
read something a
But
few days
we
ago
might
saying
get to buy it later
that's gonna
because
say it might be a
Royal Quest
pay-per-view.
1 I got to actually watch on Fight. So the first time they were in London at the Copper Box.
Maybe it has to be like a certain amount of time passes before it's available on Fight or something like that. But I think with Antonio Inoki stuff, they probably are going to want to make that available for fans to see somehow. And I actually saw New Japan has up, they've got up like a playlist of a bunch of his matches, and I saw Chris Charlton talking about it, and then I saw it yesterday. They were talking about some of it has American commentary because apparently Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton went back and recorded commentary for some of these matches.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So I was like, that's definitely something I need to check out for myself because, of course, I'm familiar with Antonio Inoki, but not nearly as much as I should be. And that's something I should probably take the time to watch, especially as somebody who loves New Japan so much. You know, that's obviously that history that's there and it's available, which is crazy to have, you know.
That was nuts. You reminded me, thank you for reminding me. It was not last year but the year before, a couple of years ago, they finally got, because TV is so weird in Japan, they finally got them to okay them going back and doing the English commentary for that stuff.
Right.
And I think they're going to keep trying to work on doing it.
That's great.
As a project, but those two are perfect for it too, because they are they're historians in their broadcast.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
You know, they are also historians in broadcast codes.
Yeah.
Some people don't have that, but these guys do. Mm-hmm. And
and I think because there are so many English speaking fans who are subscribers to New Japan who don't have that access to Inoki, because like a lot of us didn't have access to that. And I of course I'm very familiar with tape trading, but that was something that I was never involved in. And so I was like, there's a whole there's generations of fans who have never seen any of his matches beyond Twitter clips and things like that. So I think, that's huge. And I'm glad that they finally, agreed to do that. And I think especially now that he's passed and he's like from that generation, like it's so important what he's done. And like you said, even if you didn't necessarily agree with him, with Tana and other wrestlers, there have been plenty who did not agree with a lot of the things he did, but his impact on the sport is undeniable. And so I think that's something that's really cool to see that's available for fans, and especially with English commentary, like you said, and the being Chris Charlton and Kevin Kelly, like those are two people that you trust with something like that, to handle it and give it the proper respect that it deserves, and to explain it to fans. Obviously they're really good about talking to fans to explain things and not speaking at them or talking down to them. They're very good at the way they present information. And so I think that's really cool too, that they did that they were the ones who did that.
And they were the ones pushing
it. Yeah. Thank goodness they did, because that's a huge part of
time like now.
History.
Thank goodness they started.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
All right. So I think we need to talk about something, but I wasn't sure all week if we needed to talk about it. And I was hearing some other people talk about it. And I was like, I don't know. And then I said, hey, Sam, what are we talking about this weekend? And you're like, that terrible promo with Saraya. And I'm like, thank God. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I was very careful.
How are we gonna do this? Are we gonna talk about it? How are we going to talk about it? What are we going to say?
I mean, there's probably going to be things that we say that are no different, that are no different than what everybody else is saying. There's probably a lot of the same, especially because, we're recording on Sunday. People have been talking about it for 4 days now.
Yes, but we have the best opinions, so you need to hear our take on it. So.
Yeah, and so
now you get to hear
I was
the
very
best
careful. I was very careful with Twitter. I just said the segment went off the rails because it did. But I was also watching on a delay because I went to dinner with my dad, and he actually came back with us, and he doesn't really he watched wrestling a lot when I was growing up. That's where a lot of it I got where it came from, but I kept up with it and he didn't. And then like he's watched
I've created a monster.
He did. He watches some AEW here and there, but he doesn't really keep up with it. And like he does not like Chris Jericho.
Wow.
But he's never liked Chris Jericho, but he doesn't like people like, I mean, when it comes to wrestling, like it's always like The Rock and Stone Cold were his like some of his favorites, obviously, and so like nobody can do what they do to him. So like he just so he was, some of it he was interested in, some of it he was not, and he I learned was not a fan of Saraya's when she was in WWE. Apparently, from the little bit he did see of her, he was just never really a fan of hers, which I didn't know until Wednesday night. And then this certainly did not help his perception of her. But my dad is, I hate the term casual fan, but that would definitely be something like my dad would be considered, I guess, a casual fan, but he doesn't. Most of the stuff from wrestling.
I hate that they have made the idea of being a casual fan a bad thing.
Yeah, and it's
How about
not.
That?
Or just having
people
to
work,
or having to, well, that too, or like trying to dumb it down. Like you don't have to dumb things down for the casual fan. That's insulting their intelligence. Like you can turn on the TV and usually you can figure out who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. You can see like we've had this conversation with someone before about how like JR constantly talks about Riho's size, but if somebody Riho size is in the ring with Nyla Rose, I can visually see the size difference. I don't need to be constantly told that Riho is 98 pounds. Like I can see her, and I know, and I guess you could make the argument that people who are visually impaired, maybe they need some extra guidance, and I'm not trying to take away from that, but I don't need to hear every other sentence that you're talking about her. But so I think in some ways the casual fan, it has been made to be a bad thing, and it's also sometimes they make them, the casual fan, they make them sound like they're dumb and they have to have things, they have to be coddled and handheld and things like that. But we're going completely off topic here.
No, that's okay, because in that case that's different, because I think the idea behind AEW fans was supposed to be, hi, here's an alternative to what's out there right now.
Exactly.
And so
but yes,
once is enough, JR, just for the people. If they didn't hear it at the beginning, you could tell one more time at the end, but I'm pretty sure people can pick up on it, impaired or not. I would say in JR's case, it really comes down to, if you don't need to talk the whole time. If you don't have anything good to say,
it goes back to the Jericho.
Just keep it
right. And it goes back to the Jericho thing. Like with Jericho, just sometimes I know he feels like, especially because he probably has a podcast, he feels like he has to talk all the time and fill the space. And sometimes you can just let things breathe and be quiet. And JR is that way sometimes too. And I know a lot of it, JR has had years and years and years and years in WWE and WWF. And so a lot of it's probably habits he just can't break, because he has to, that's how he's always had to talk about things. But he doesn't have to do that anymore.
It's okay.
It's okay. But so
anyway, back to Saraya. See, it was so terrible, we didn't want to talk about it. We're trying to avoid the subject.
I will say I do feel for her, because she has not been in front of a live audience like that in a very long time. She even said, I'm nervous. She said it in the ring. She said, I'm really nervous. So I will give her that. Like I completely, I feel for her there, but the whole thing was a mess. And it was just the weird, and people had like a problem with her taking a shot at Vince, which I was like, who cares? I mean,
that was like the least of
that, exactly.
About the entire
and I think
segment.
her point was, I mean, because people are like, oh, well, she was, champion this many times and she was heavily featured. Sure, but that doesn't mean that her boss listened to her. That doesn't mean that her boss listened to her ideas.
We have a lot of good evidence to suggest that her boss did not listen to her because of her specific gender. He was not interested in listening to people of her her gender persuasion.
Right.
I'm sorry.
So I mean, she does.
Her boss was Vince McMahon, guys.
Yeah. So exactly. So I mean. And so we weren't there. We don't know what her experience was like. So I can't, I mean, if that was, I mean, maybe, and I do see the argument, like, she was a heavily featured person in WWE, and she was, but that doesn't mean that Vince listened to her ideas. so that was, again, that was the least of the things that she said. I think the biggest issues were I guess let me focus on some of the positives before we get into the negatives. So another positive thing was she put Toni Storm over, which I really appreciated because nobody else in that company is putting Toni Storm over. She's an interim champion, but they might as well just not have a belt because, I mean,
there's a women's division.
She's defended it she defended it against Serena that night, which was a very good match. And that's the matches that Toni should be having.
Good, yeah.
That's the matches that if as a women's champion, you should be having those type of matches. But prior to that, they love them some tag teams. And now we get a trios match next week. Of course we do, because, we can't spend too much time on the women's division. That doesn't make sense.
We have 15 extra minutes for it next week.
Yeah, let's see where that goes. But so I will say, and then also the women did get 11 minutes this week, which is the longest they've had in quite a while on Dynamite. So I will give Paige because Paige was talking about how we're going to create a revolution. Well, that was another thing I tweeted. I said, I'll believe it when I see it. So I do want to, and we did have the first ever women's lumberjack match, to which the crowd did not give a shit. When she said that, the crowd was completely dead. They did not react, which was sad. But then that shows you how the women's division has been presented this far. This is a first time ever thing for the women, and the fans couldn't care less. I mean, it was also in Philly, which that crowd was kind of all over the place. Like certain things they were really into and certain things they were not, and certain things that probably would have got over in other cities didn't. I saw somebody tweet and they were like, this Philly crowd is like some of these ECW crowds, like where they just aren't they're just not making any noise at all. Like they weren't very reactive to Juice, which was disheartening because A, I love Juice, and B, I thought Juice versus John Moxley was very good. They always have really great matches. So but then they were super over for Bandito. I mean, rightfully so, because Bandito was doing some really cool stuff in the main event, but and they came alive for that, and they kind of got into, they were behind Yuta because Yuta's from there, and so they were into him at certain parts of the show as well. So that crowd was all over the place, but so it didn't help Saraya at all, but especially when she's like, here's the first time ever women's lumberjack match, and I think JR tried to call her a lumberjill, and she was like, no, it's lumberjack.
Can we not? Can we not? You're missing the point. Just
right. so
she said it. Let sleeping dogs lie. Right. Moving on. It's cool.
Exactly.
It's so that everyone knows.
Right.
I wonder if they've been to Philly a lot. Mm-hmm. I know this because my friends live there, and they're at a point where they don't go to the shows,
right?
Because they've been here 6 times, and they're going to Seattle on one time on January 4th.
Right.
And I know that argument keeps coming up, but it is a viable argument. I mean, is there a little bit of?
Well, look at Chicago. I mean, because you can see, even the last show that Brandy, they were in Chicago, and Brandy, that terrible segment, which was not necessarily Brandy's fault, but this segment with her and Paige Van Zandt, and they were just awful to Brandy, and it just, the fan, and that situation, it reminded me of old certain shows where the fans try to make themselves part of the show.
Yeah.
And that's very much, and so it just seems like Chicago, because they're getting so much, it seems like in certain cities, the reactions would be completely different. And I think Chicago is definitely getting to that point in certain cases. And I think maybe they should back off of going to Chicago so much. Sorry, JD and people who are in the Chicago area, but it's starting to come across, and it's affecting and I will say, I am not one of those people who really cares one way or another about fan reaction, because I don't watch for the crowd reaction.
Well, sure.
But
it certainly does add to the atmosphere.
It does.
And when they don't react at all for something that's, like you said, in this case, it's about presentation. I was excited. I was like, oh, cool, they're doing a women's lumberjack match. I've never seen that. I can't remember when I've seen that. If that's been, I'm
sure
that's
definitely
been a thing.
It's happened in WWE.
I know it's happened in WWE before.
But it was the first time in AEW, and AEW.
But it was like, cool, we'll get some of these people out here that we have on the roster.
And then it was like 9 people, which I think that was probably what part of the thing that killed it was like, we're going to have this revolution. She puts over Toni Storm, doesn't let Toni Storm talk.
Yeah,
Toni didn't get to talk. Athena didn't get to talk. And of course, they let Britt Baker come out and talk. And that was a mistake because Britt took control of that segment when she shouldn't have. If Saraya is who you are going to, I guess, be building this division around, even though it sounds like at this point she's not going to be in the ring, but she's your big name, like right now. Britt should not have taken control of that situation. And then the back and forth between them was not good. The timing was off. The whole thing she made about you're gonna make fun of my name or something when your name Britt rhymes with shit, and I was like, God, this is terrible. Like, this is why. And I said, when she said that, I said, this is why they need Maria, because they can't be doing stuff like this. Like, it's the Marina promo all over again, except it's on live TV, and it's with Saraya, who is your big name that you've apparently signed to a 3-year contract worth a lot of money. Like, you can't have things like that happening. And I know, again, she hasn't been on TV in a really long time, and like, they probably put her with Britt to have kind of maybe balance that out a little bit, because Britt is good on the microphone. And then again, I have to point out once again that Britt was awful in the beginning at promos. And I'm not saying Saraya is bad at promos, because she never has been. I know it's rusty. And
she's just I think to me it very much came off as ring rust.
Yeah, it's ring rust, and she was very nervous. And
it's been like 7 years or some silly. I mean, it's been a long time. You can't just. Yeah, and so also the last thing she did was scripted.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why that whole segment proved my point of why they need to hire Maria. Agreed. Because they need creative direction, they need help with promos, and again, they don't have to be scripted promos, just an idea of where things are going to go in a better sense. And then when it's almost like when Paige says that I'm nervous, that Britt like went for the kill. She's like, oh, well, then I'm going to show her this is my division. And it came off, whether that was the intention or not, it just came over with as Britt being like, I'm not letting her take my spot. I'm not letting her take my spotlight. I'm not bury her, but I'm going to show why I am better. Like, I don't know if, like, again, I don't know if that was Britt's intention, but knowing, like, just watching the segment as a whole, that's kind of how it felt, which I don't like. I don't think that's a good. I mean, it's different if you don't like. I get you don't want people to take your spot because that's what the wrestling business is. Well, I get it. And that was kind of, the rumors about
you're not stupid,
right?
And you know about business because you run one when you're not doing this, and
right? Yeah,
what it's starting to come on now that you're sitting here talking about it, I'm sitting here realizing that it kind of came off as sort of like girl versus girl stuff.
Yeah, and see, that's the shit WWE has ran on for years, and I cannot stand that.
I really like it if we could stop with the girl hating girl thing so much, because we're girls, and
and it's
where I'm telling you you're this, and you're telling me you're this, and you're not gonna take my spot, bitch, and all of these things, and it just it starts to come off for me. As you were talking about it, I really realized it brought me back to because I worked in theater. I was not a talent. I was the everything else. And I was very closely involved with an improv theater. And so I watched a lot of people learning how to improv, and it's a really valuable tool to have in theater, especially if someone drops a line or whatever. I mean, live performance, it's good to have improv experience under your belt. Mm-hmm. But what that came off as is like a botched, it was like, that was one of those times when in a theater class, you would have been like, okay, you guys are done. You've lost your direction.
Right.
Your improv is over. Good job. What did we learn from this skit?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody else go sit on the bench and wait for the person to walk up. Okay.
Right.
Cool. Like you can't have them learning how to improv on the TVs. They need to be doing that in story meetings during the week where they're learning how to be given plot points and improv. Like I don't care if you get a freaking acting coach in there, a theater acting coach, just to help them out with that stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, Maria obviously is the best choice because she can do all of that and she understands the flipping wrestling business. So
exactly. Yeah. And so it exposed them in a way that they weren't expecting. And I think, again, like, I'm sure on paper, like when you see that on paper, oh, Saraya's going to come out on the microphone. Like you think, no, I'm not expecting an MJF type of thing because he's on TV all the time and she hasn't been on. Like, so I'm not expecting that, but I was expecting, everybody's expecting a more solid promo that she's really going to get herself over. She's going to get the women's division over. And then it just ended up falling apart. And then it, like, again, Britt almost like went for the kill and just made, and I know, and I'm sure they can make the argument, well, she's a heel and Saraya's in charge of the baby faces, which sure, but it just exposed them. The whole women's division looked really bad, and then it didn't help when she's out here.
Give the baby faces some time then, and then bring Britt out, because we haven't established the baby faces enough to have the heels coming out and burying them right at the beginning of trying to establish.
And then the champion's just standing there. Like the champion, like Tony could have just come and grabbed the mic from Saraya and just been like, and cut her off or something, but she didn't. She left Paige out there, or not Paige, sorry, Saraya out there to just kind of fend for herself, which maybe she just didn't know what to do because it's live television and you're like, can't just come take Saraya's microphone from her. But on the other hand, she's dying out there and like something needed, or Athena should have done, and I saw people, they were like, where is Jade? Like, why couldn't she have come out and been like, try to save the segment? And I do want to point out that Hurricane Ian may have played a role in who was available and which women were there. And so clearly we know that Jade was there because Jade was in a backstage segment on Rampage, and that was filmed after Dynamite, so it wasn't a live episode. Nyla was there, so both of them, I guess maybe because they had their own thing for Rampage, they didn't send them out there. But like, so when you're saying here's the women's division and let's bring them out here and it's 5 women, it doesn't look good. And again, I think Hurricane Ian probably did factor into that. I'm sure I'm assuming that some of the women could not travel. But like, there's just like Sky Blue I think Sky Blue was out there, but there's just women that could have been out there. If they were backstage, they should have been out there. So I don't know especially if you're going to have a lumberjack match, then you need most lumberjack matches that are like 30 people.
Maybe that's night, like when you're short staffed, maybe that's not the night for the lumberjack match.
Yeah, maybe not. They could have just left it at,
I'm just saying,
maybe just leave it at,
don't have a banquet on a night when you're like only got 3 servers.
Right. I mean, they could have saved that because we already were getting Serena versus Tony. So and Serena and Tony they don't need anything else. Like, I get why it was like in theory why it was a lumberjack match, because it's the baby faces versus heels. You've got Tony versus Serena. Serena has aligned herself with Britt and things like that at times. And so like, I get like the concept and like why they did it, but it wasn't necessary. And then it just looked bad when you've got 4 or 5 women on each side. And then on the hill side, you have Rebel out there who doesn't wrestle. Like, she wrestles like once every 4 months on Elevation. And so she's not, and so, I mean, obviously she's going to be out there because of Britt and Jamie, but she's not needed necessarily. And so it's just, so I'm like, so then where are the rest of your heels when Rebel's not even a wrestler and she's out there? Like, where are the rest of your heels at? Like, where is Jade? And I did notice, like, when on Rampage, in the backstage segment, Kiara wasn't there. So I assume that Kiara probably could not have traveled because of that. Diamante wasn't there either. Probably because she couldn't travel. So they should have just scrapped the lumberjack segment and just moved it to something else. I mean, they still can have, at this point, like, there's still plenty of firsts that the women's division could be having. So you could just, and I know it was the point, I guess the point was Saraya's going to change the women's division. I'm giving you an 11-minute match, and here's a first ever match we've never done before. So I get it. But on the other hand, when you can't have women travel and your locker room looks like you have 10 people on your roster, that your division is that small, like, it just, didn't look good. And you had Willow out there, and I'm like, yeah, give Willow a microphone. Just that whole segment was just not good, and it's harder and harder to deny that there is something fundamentally wrong with the women's division. Like that, just
It's directionless.
Yeah,
it just feels that promo was the metaphor for where we are. I feel like in the AEW, it was hung out to dry and directionless.
It was.
And that's sort of where I think that is almost like the title of the women's division right now. Is like,
and it shouldn't be when you have people like Toni Storm, and
they have way too many. They've gone out.
You have Athena. You've got Ruby Soho. I know Ruby Soho's not currently on TV because she's recovering from a broken nose. But you have Red Velvet, who is not. Apparently, I heard she's injured as well. So she's not there. But like you have you have enough other women that you should be not having that situation. It shows that all the effort is going into the men. Clearly, yes, obviously there are men who are directionless on there, and there are some men who are not happy with the way they're booked, which I'm not disregarding that at all. But this has been an ongoing situation with the women's division. And Wednesday was just big spotlights. Like, this is what your women's division looks like. This is what it's looked like for a really long time, and you can't cover it up anymore. Like, you can't cover that up like we see. And I felt bad a little bit for Saraya, because she was having to go on Twitter the next day, and because people were really just letting her have it. Like, in some things, she was not good on it, but and I do wish people would keep in mind that she has not been on TV in a very long time in front of a live audience like that. So I do want to give her the benefit of the doubt, but then everything else that went on with this, like, I think the argument should be about the segment itself and not about Saraya. Just Saraya,
like, and her background and all of her other things. Is that right? We're talking about the content of what we saw on our wrestling program that was not well done. And
no, it wasn't, and it
was not the best. I wouldn't clip that to show to people.
AEW put that entire segment on YouTube. It was like,
really? Because that's not really what if I was trying to entice ladies, especially ladies younger even than us. That's about the last segment I'd be clipping and throwing out there. They put the entire. I mean, I guess if they're trying to get they got the. They were wanting WWE fans. They wanted for the men, so I guess they'll do that with the women too. I mean,
it was like a full 7.5 or 8 minute segment, and they put the whole thing up, and it had I think when I first saw it, it had 300 and something thousand views, but it's because it was I'm sure it's people they saw Saraya
people watching for good reasons and not because they're like, look at her.
I did not go to the comment sections. I can only imagine.
No.
Poor person who has to moderate that. See that type of stuff. I'm sorry for you, but they put up the entire segment. They didn't clip it or anything, and I was like, segment was not it.
It was that.
I was
feel worse.
It was not a good thing. But so, and I don't know, where do you go from here? Like, how does Saraya recover from that? And then how do you recover? And then the whole thing with Britt and her and Britt was just. And now there's the whole stuff with Jamie, and now Jamie and Britt are realigned, and I don't like that. A lot of fans, somebody told me the other day, they're like, I don't like having my time wasted. And that's what that storyline has done. It's wasted my time because they have waited too long for the turn. Because there's a difference between long-term storytelling and then just dragging shit out.
For the sake of getting to a thing, or because you don't know what to do, so you're sort of stumbling along.
Right. And I guess they could I'm sure they're like, well, we didn't expect Thunder Rosa to get injured, which clearly you didn't. But if Tony was going to win anyway, then I don't see how that factors into this story. And Jamie, that story's gone on way too long. Obviously I still think Jamie's going to turn on her, but I was like, this story does not need to go on till Full Gear.
But it's they've missed their chance 3 different times to have that turn make any difference. I really, at this point, it's like, Well, oh, right. Okay, she finally turned on her.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and
it's almost like the
like
thing with and it's almost kind of the thing with Julia. Like they dragged the stuff out with Julia with House of Black forever. Like there were a couple of times that they could have just turned her sooner and then they didn't. And luckily it's working so well because Julia is embracing, like she's embraced this role really well. And Julia is someone I think they are doing really good with in the women's division. And she's on Elevation and Dark a lot, and she wins matches in like 2.5 minutes. But I think the point is that her evilness or the darkness gives her strength, and so she's flattening women. Like, and so that makes sense to me. Like, I don't have an issue when there's storyline reasons behind things like that, like when Nyla was squashing people. That's what Masha Slamovich mostly doesn't impact. Like she has like 45-second matches because she's like this monster.
Yeah, right.
Who kills. So I get it with Julia.
She's Brock Lesnar.
Yeah. And so with Julia.
Lady Brock Lesnar. I come out, I do 3 moves, I kill somebody, I pin them. It's over. Bye.
Exactly. And so,
I get paid a ridiculous amount of money. Peace.
Yeah. But see, like her storyline, that makes sense. But then there's, and so like with Julia, I think they could translate that and put it on Dynamite or Rampage. I mean, I don't necessarily want a second match that lasts 2.5 minutes, but in Julia's situation with the story she's telling, like they could do that. I do want to see her get some longer matches. And then another reason I'm wondering if they are kind of doing shorter matches is she's not been wrestling very long at all. I think she's only been wrestling like a year, if that.
Yeah,
so I think they are protecting her, but she's very good. Like this quick, like for her to be, as she's not been in the business very long at all, and she's really embracing this character, which I really like. She went and got a serpent tattoo on her leg like 2 weeks ago. Like, so she's really seems to embrace.
Girl.
Yeah, she really seems to be embracing. It's funny because she tweeted about it and she said she doesn't know how Brody and Malachi have like full body tattoos, and she said, what was it? Because she said it hurt like a bitch, but she like kind of censored it, but not. And I can't remember if it was Dax or somebody was like, I like how you censored bitch, but not shit. But I thought that was really funny. But yeah, so I really Julia is, so she is an example of somebody that I think now that they've got her into this role, which it took forever to get her here, but now that she's here, she's fully embracing it and she's running with it. And I think she's somebody they're doing a really good job with. I'm interested to kind of see what they're doing with Penelope. It seems like they're kind of building her towards something as well. So, I mean, they've got little pieces, but it's just not all there. And then we see the big gaps and big holes after Wednesday's segment was just so bad. And then I do want to
put those two, if you hide them away now that you've had this segment, you're almost admitting that you messed up.
Yeah.
So you gotta watch it on that front, I guess.
Yeah. And then they're, and then so they've got the trios women's match next week because, that's what we do with the women's division now. We put them in random matches like this because we don't have anything else.
Trios matches.
Yeah, they're like, wait, we have trios for the men. Let's do trios for the ladies. Well, they're not competing for titles. You're just throwing 3 random women together in a team. But and I also want to point out because I was thinking about this when I talked about Julia and how she's having these 2.5 minute matches. There was a match on last week's Dark that was filmed in Orlando, so not in front of yes, in front of a live audience, but not as they do in cities like prior to Dynamite. This was recorded in a studio in Orlando. They had a 20-second tag team match for the women.
I'm sorry, 20 seconds?
Mm-hmm. It was the Renegade Twins versus 2 other women who I think have never wrestled in AEW or they've wrestled there one other time, and so with the Renegade Twins,
they're from Mission Pro, right?
Yes, they are from Mission Pro. They get used. I believe they're Mission Pro tag team champions. If they are not now, they have been in the past.
I saw a little bit of them wrestling because of Thunder Rosa's blog, and actually was like, oh yeah. And then they've done Dark and Elevation right?
a lot. Yeah, they've done it a
lot. Wait, I know these girls.
Yeah, and they do the twin magic thing that the Bella Twins were doing, where one will like hide under the ring and they'll go and then they'll like switch out and they think the referee's dumb and doesn't see it and he usually catches on at some point. And so they do that thing a lot. So they've been building them and then all of a sudden they got a 20-second victory, like literally 20 seconds. And I'm like, this is first of all, it's a YouTube show. So you have the ability to go as long as you would like to go. Then you have, this is happening in Orlando. Like, it doesn't, I don't understand. Like, there was no reasoning for a squash match in this segment because they're not, I don't believe that they're on, I mean, maybe they are on some type of lower deal tiered contract, but it's not like they're not all elite. Like, I don't understand. And they typically, up until like they are being more lately, they have been booked to win their matches, and they've been booked against like other talent, like indie talent. So I get, like, I don't have an issue with them winning, but I have an issue with them having a 20-second squash match on YouTube, when YouTube, you have plenty of time to do. And it's not like the match was crap and they're like, oh, we have to edit it down to only 20 seconds. Like, it was like, I know some of those matches on Dark and Elevation do get edited because the matches aren't, they have botches or they have this or that. And so I get editing certain things like that. But this was literally a 20-second tag team match. Like, it just reinforces everything else that happened.
Leave it out, rather than have 20 seconds.
It was bad. And so that happened. That aired the day before the Saraya stuff. And so when you take it into that, like, when you look at it that way, it's just it looks like the women's division is a mess. And they need help. And it's October the 2nd, and October the 8th is when Maria becomes available. And I'm crossing my fingers that in the next few weeks that we hear that Maria has signed with AEW. I'm going to be really sad if she signs with WWE. Or really any other company, but if she signs, I was like, because if she signs with WWE, like, I mean, you let her get away, and that's on you.
Like, that's a big,
especially after what happened. Like, if they look at just the last 2 weeks of what happened with Marina, and then now looking at this, you should be like, oh, we might need some help. Like, we need to reevaluate how we're handling the women's division.
This is bigger than Madison Rain.
Yeah. And I heard that Madison...
That is not an insult to her.
No, not at all.
Not her. It's just...
Well, and from what I understand, she's there in a coaching position. And so that's not...
That's
really
useful.
That's not her job, really. I mean, not that
she's
she
can't coach, not creative.
Exactly. That's my point. Is she's not that she can't, like, give advice and things like that.
No, but there's a big giant difference between being an athletic coach and being a business manager.
Right.
Exactly. There's a reason why teams who have the coach guy who's also the general manager, their team tends to suck. Because it's two totally separate jobs that require two totally separate lines of focus. It just is.
Yeah.
And I mean, very few people can. That's a lot to balance.
It
hundreds.
Is. That's
and in a corporation, even, I mean, big, small, whatever. That's like hundreds, probably over 100, easily over 100 people, potentially hundreds of people. I mean,
right.
I've had 80 kids at day camp before, and that's crazy enough. I can't. Right. And that was like that's like easily a day camp will do that, and that's 10 years ago. I'm sure.
Right.
Who knows these days?
Yeah.
But I mean, it takes, and things fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
And people need attention, and especially talent. I mean, you do have to coddle with talent a little.
Yeah, well, we've seen that. So,
and also teach them. But I mean, I guess it's the parity issue is always the issue, where it's like, is this evenly distributed amongst everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess it's not communism, so watch out.
Right.
My hippie commie. Yes, there.
Yeah. So I don't know where they go from here. I mean, it seems like Jade and again, like, Jade's doing her own thing, and she she's going at things like her and Nyla are about to do something, so they've got that focused. They've got the three-way women's match, or the trios match, next week. I don't know. I mean, they've got to, on the one hand, like, you have to kind of throw Saraya back out there, and just like she's gonna have to.
I think you kind of definitely do.
So you have to throw her back out there, and just because you don't want to take that confidence from, or, like, I'm sure her confidence took a big hit after that. So you've got to get her back in front of a live crowd again. I mean, that's what they did. And they did that with Britt. Like, when she had those terrible promos in the beginning, especially that the one that she cut in, I think it was in Dallas, and it was like the Whataburger promo, and that was really, really awful. But they just kept throwing her back out there until she got it, and she eventually did, and she's one of the better talkers that they've got. And Saraya is not a bad talker. We've seen her. It's just she's got the, she's had some ring rust, that, like, as it's probably the best way to phrase that. But so they do have to kind of just put her back out there.
Well, they have to do it not just because their confidence took a hit, but because it's like, are you committed to this or not?
Right. Yeah, you brought her in for 3 years. Like, you
threw her out there. You did all that stuff. She got through it. She got through the week after it. You need to put her back out there because you need to let everybody know that you're committed to continuing to push this person the same way you did push Britt, even though she was doing bad promos.
Right.
Otherwise, you are sending the message that you really only care about one or two women.
Yeah.
One.
Well, I mean, and you can even make the same argument for Jade, because Jade is very good on the microphone, and she obviously was very, you could see how
she started out. She
has definitely gotten
so much better.
But what did they do? They partnered her with Bryan Danielson. Yeah. So if you were, and that's obviously in an in-ring situation. So if you're in a creative situation, then you pair them with somebody like Maria who can help them. Like, if you can do that for the wrestling
people
side
understand
of things,
this, Maria. Get Maria Kanellis.
And I feel bad. I mean, and if they do hire Maria, like, it's gonna be hard on her because people are gonna expect her to be able to deliver, and this is gonna be something that's gonna take a while. Like, look at where we are. We're next week is year 3 anniversary on TNT, and look at where we are with the women's division. And so,
that's sports fans, I mean, we always want our team to be better immediately, and we will never not like.
Right.
I mean, and the minute your team's like been winning for 50 years in a row, and then you like don't win for the 51st year, and the coach and everyone else needs to be fired, because that's how we all are.
Yeah, and so it's going to take her some time if they bring her in, or who, I was going to say whoever they bring in. I don't know who else they could bring in for that position, but and it's going to take Paige some time. Like, I think, and I guess I'm kind of guilty of it too. We were all kind of guilty of the fact that we thought, oh, it's Saraya. She's going to be fine. It'll be fine. And then she comes out and it's a disaster. And so you don't want to be like, oh, well, don't put her on TV. She doesn't deserve it. She's washed up. She's been, wrestling has moved past her because she's been gone for 8 years. Like, and I don't think that's a fair assessment. I'm sure some fans will look at it that way. Like, because they'll want things to be changed immediately.
Yeah, but you can't know that from one performance. You don't know that. I mean,
and
I'll give her, I mean, someone who's put that much effort in that I actually appreciated as a wrestler, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. She's been gone forever, and she had a serious, this is not, like, no matter what, it's still in your mind, and it's still the reality is, like, she broke her neck. She has, spinal stenosis or cervical spine, whatever, I mean, it's going to be there. And then, and that it just, everything is going to take time. I don't think they were put in a good situation in the first place. So to be judging her off of that, I think is unfair, regardless of any of the other outside thingies that the Twitter the troll gallery is going to, bring up. Is that the reality of just the content and the moment and the timing of all of those things. It was not done well.
No, it isn't. And when
I feel like I say that was poorly executed a lot on this show.
Well, it was. And it's hard because her whole thing was, I'm going to bring change and I'm going to bring a revolution. And then that was anything but, I mean, clearly the revolution's not going to happen overnight.
Revolution.
But
that's literally never happened in history, guys. Okay?
No, it hasn't. And
that's
and I will give her, they did get the 11-minute women's match. I don't think that's going to be happening every week, even next week with our extra 15 minutes of Dynamite. I don't expect a second women's match that's going to last those extra 15 minutes. I don't even know that we'll get an
surprise. We're giving 15 extra minutes to the women.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know that we'll get an extra women's match next week with that, with the extended programming. But I mean, So I will give her that.
Extra 15 minutes better come with an announcement that ROH has a TV deal.
Yeah, I hope so. And
chop, Tony. You doing this with your own money now, brother.
If you're going to put Jericho, if you're going to take the title off of Claudio after 5 matches and putting it on Jericho, then you better have something coming. You better have something coming. But yeah, so anyway, back to the women's revolution.
Yes,
like, I hope she's correct. I hope there is some sort of women's revolution where they just fix what the hell they're doing and we don't have to use a give AEW Women a chance hashtags. But and we did get a first ever lumberjack match for the women out of it, so I am pleased with that. But everything else took away from that, and that Wednesday was not any start of a revolution, really. So where does your women's revolution go? Like, you've got so next week we've got them in the 3-way match. I'm sure they've got a Rampage match. Battle of the Belts is next week as well. It's also live immediately after Rampage. I assume there will be at least one women's match. My guess is that's where Jade versus Nyla happens, because they try to have at least one women's title match on there, and the way they've been booking Tony, it will probably be Jade. I think, because I don't think we're going to get 2 women's matches on that show. So I don't. So once we get past next week, like, how is this a women's revolution? Like, what are your plans? How do we have Saraya lead that? Like, what are they going to have to? They're going to have to stop with the tag team matches and with relying on tag team matches and trios matches and random fatal 4-ways. Like, they're going to have to build Tony as an interim champion. We still have not heard when Thunder Rosa is coming back. Depending on the severity of her injury, it could be a while. So they need to book Tony like a champion. Like, they need to book, because if you look at the whole way if you go back to how they started out with Thunder Rosa to what they're doing with Tony right now, like, it's not good. It's not. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. I mean, like, we talked about it a few weeks ago. Like, they started out with Thunder Rosa, where she's mid promo of her very first promo as champion, and she gets jumped by Nyla Rose, and that seemed to be
shrieked at by Vicky Guerrero,
right? And that seemed to kind of be the tone for her segment. I mean, the tone for her title run. I mean, she did do some really cool things. Like, she went and defended her title in Japan. She was supposed to be going to Mexico to wrestle Taya Valkyrie. Like, there were some good things there, but as a whole, like, it's just not good. And then Tony's, like, if you look at Tony's title reign, we're like, what, a month into it, and she's defended her title, I think, one time, twice, because I guess one of them was the fatal 4-way. But, like, they have no direction for her. So I don't know what this revolution is gonna look like and how we get it on track. And so that's a very big statement for Saraya to make, and they have to follow through, or it's going to blow up in their faces.
Because you're going to keep having Sam in your media scrums, and she's going to keep bringing this stuff up.
She is. And it was funny because I was, I didn't say it on here, but I started writing for another website. And when I'm writing for SC Scoops now. And so I was telling my friends about that. And Doug, who, if you have seen the show, he's been on here, he said, Sam's like, try to kick me out of your scrums now, because I'm just going to come back with another. I'm just gonna come back with another.
I'm getting media credentials everywhere.
I'm just gonna start collecting
You'll
them.
Never defeat me. I have all the credentials.
Exactly. I'm coming for you and asking you questions.
There we go. That's the women's revolution right there.
This is Sam asking the same question.
Hey,
Tony, what the hell are you doing? Do you like women's wrestling?
Revolutions don't start with the fighting. They start with the word, man.
Yeah.
Talking about it. Saying something.
Yeah. Well,
making that guy be accountable.
Somebody has to make him be accountable. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see where the women's revolution goes. Maybe it leads into All Elite Women, whatever that's going to be. Hopefully, again, not a reality show. We've already seen Saraya on a reality show. Oh God, I did not put those two together.
Oh,
I did not put that together until I just said it. Please,
why did
please.
You do
Please don't be a reality show, and that's why you brought Saraya in, is because you want Total Divas Part 2.
Man.
Damn it. Man.
Well, on that note,
I don't even want to speak that into existence. Let's just take that right back out. I did not say.
Jeez, I might cut that out of the
I'm gonna
version.
We're speaking a women's show into existence, an all women's show, and that is Saraya's revolution. Is that she's bringing in all elite women, and it's an hour of nothing but women's matches and storyline and character development. That's what that hour is.
There we go. Much better. Much more positive.
So, University didn't hear that first part. It's this part.
What part? I don't know what you're talking about.
We're talking about All Elite Women, the Revolution. That's what we're talking about.
There we go.
And then we're going to play Ricky Starks' The Revolution will be televised. We're going to go borrow his theme song.
Someday I'll get a little fancier. But you should be watching the YouTube show.
Yes.
But we have made this available as an audio version as well. So, if you're predisposed to audio, that's great. You're gonna want to tune into our video live stream, the next one that we have, though, even if you listen to the audio, because there's going to be some stuff that you won't be able to enjoy without the
audio will
video. The audio will not cover the fun.
It will not do it justice. Hopefully we'll get to make that announcement soon, because it's getting close to when we are going to be doing that. So hopefully we'll get to announce it in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, you're definitely going to want to be subscribed to the YouTube channel, and you're going to want to set reminders for that one. For definitely. And we will have the audio version. It just will not be as fun.
Yeah, it won't be.
You'll have to use your imagination.
You will.
For that one. You'll really have to use it. But yeah, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we're not the only ones that have awesome content. There's a lot of awesome content by some really cool people who work really hard to bring you wrestling content on a weekly basis. And then there's the Patreon. That is just $5 a month. There's a lot of really good content over there. They work really hard to get you all kinds of conversations. There's MMA stuff over there. There's all kinds of wrestling, Joshi, WWE, AEW, all kinds of Impact, obviously.
Everything.
There's everything. So go subscribe. Yeah, go give $5 a month to some really cool creators, and you're helping them out. And then of course we're on Twitter at Powerbombshells, and that's where you can see you'll see the announcement of we'll probably make the announcement of the live stream on the show, but then you'll get all your reminders to set reminders. We'll be on Twitter. I'm trying to do better about sharing more articles over there. And now that I'm with SE Scoops, you're going to get a bunch of news articles.
It's okay. It's okay.
That's what I'll be doing over there. Daily DDT is more of the editorial stuff and opinion-based stuff. And then SE Scoops will have a little bit more of the news-based stuff. So I'll be tweeting that there.
You guys get to see the full SE scope of her wrestling nerdery, and you should go take, because I follow it and I read it, and you should too.
Yeah, see? What a great endorsement.
I mean, come on. And all that stuff you can find most all of that at Powerbombshells and at Fight Game Media.
Yes.
On Twitter, and you can find the links to everything else. And I also, for the people that are listening, I try to link everything in the description. Mm-hmm. So
I hope you get back to it. Yep. And then you can follow us each on our personal Twitter, where I tend to live tweet Dynamite and things like that.
She's way better at live tweeting than me.
I will also warn you, it is getting into playoff season in baseball, and my team is now currently in first place in the National League East. And if we win tonight, we will have swept the Mets, which nobody thought was going to happen when we were 10 games back. And then we're going into postseason, and hopefully all the way. So if you're following me, you're going to see a lot of baseball tweets between now and the end of the season. And then if we go back to back and repeat as World Series champions, well, then you get a whole off season of Braves won the World Series tweets, because that's what I did last season. So you get a lot of that. Yeah,
It
and
is what it is.
sometimes I tweet about football when I do get to watch it.
I tweet about football on occasion. I tweet about cute dogs on occasion because I
Yeah, I
have a
tweet
few
about
of
that too.
those.
I mean, I tweet about
I
other
mean,
things. I tweet about other things too that some people probably won't be a fan of, but it's my Twitter.
I
But I'm
try
just
to
more.
keep it, I try to keep it light. I try to only be
I don't.
slightly
I used
opinionated.
no. I used to keep it light, but no. I'm just I It gets opinionated over on my Twitter.
It
So
depends. It
if
depends
you,
on the week.
it depends on what kind of things are happening.
And yeah,
In
that's
the
exactly right. The
because
world
there's
is a
some things that
crazy
I just
place.
there's some things I just will not be quiet about. So I'm just warning you ahead of time. If that's not for you, then just stick to the Power Bombshells Twitter.
That's yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, thank you for your support. Thank you for watching or listening. If that's the case, we appreciate that. We will be back next week, and maybe next week we'll be able to tell you about our live stream. We'll see, but it's coming soon, so just be ready. And I think that's it for this week.
That is it. That's awesome.
All right. So everybody have a great week. Oh, and I do want to say real quick, if you were affected by Hurricane Ian at all, our thoughts are with you because I know that was a really tough thing. Luckily, Charlotte got spared. We just had a lot of heavy rain on Friday. Power flickered on and off a couple times, but that was it. And we were extremely lucky. And so I've seen some of the devastation. And so if you are affected, or you or any of your loved ones were affected by that, we are thinking of you because I know that was a really, really tough thing that you guys are having to deal with right now.
For serious. Sam said it perfect.